Okay, 1.5 is directly connected to your 1.1, and I kept saying that whenever I was teaching on 1.1. We're solving absolute value inequalities, so there will be some isolating, like 1.4, where we had to get that absolute value by itself first, and then it switches back to 1.1. Okay, so if you struggle in that very first lesson, now is your chance to relearn it and get it down. So make sure you're asking your questions and you're catching yourself if you start making mistakes. Okay. Y'all's quiz is going to be over 1.4 and 1.5, so you really got to get it down. The quiz is next class on review day. So I teach you 1.5 today. Friday will be 1.4, 1.5 quiz. Okay. All right, so before we start anything, we have to think about what absolute value is, which this is our third lesson with absolute value. Okay, so by definition, absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So if I have a number line and say I could go all the way just to -4 and +4. Okay. Say I have that number line and I give you the absolute value of x is less than 2. All right. Well, I just said by definition the absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So me saying the absolute value of x is less than 2, I'm wanting the distance a number is from 0 to be less than 2 units. Okay? That's what this expression, this inequality means. If I want that distance to be less than 2, what span of numbers could be valid on this number line? 1 to what?
-4.
Okay, so you're telling me these would be less than 2?
Yes.
Okay, why'd you include the negative one?
Because
you can still, this is still 1 unit away from 0. Now, could I expand it to the -2 and 2?
no, because it's not equal. That's not equal.
It's not equal to, but I could put a boundary here. What would I have to make sure?
It has an open circle.
It has an open circle. So you're telling me it's not equal to, so it has an open circle. So it could go all the way up to -2 and +2, because either way, going from 0 up to 2, that's going to be less than 2 units.
Yes.
And going from 0 down to -2, that's still going to be less than 2 units. Okay? Now, that distance, those are the span of numbers for my distance to be less than 2. What does that look like? An and compound inequality. Okay? Now, what if I have another number line, same values, all the way to -4 and +4. And I say, I want the absolute value, that's too small, absolute value to be greater than 2. So that means I want the distance from 0 to be greater than 2 units. So where would I be going then?
Past 2.
Past 2. So all of these. What about 2? Open circle. Okay, so anything past 2, I'm getting larger. I'm getting farther away from 0. Is that it? Where else can I go?
Nowhere.
Okay, I did my positives. What about my negatives? Is there any part of the negatives that I could shade to be a distance greater than 2? -3 and -4. So pretty much the same thing, but just outward more negative than -2. Okay, so when I want my distance to be less than, I want it really close to 0. Okay, I want that as close as I can. I want a small boundary. Okay, when I want it greater than 2, I want to go away from 0. I want as far away as possible. What does this create?
An or.
An or. So what we're going to learn today is anytime you have the absolute value of anything less than a number, that's going to create an and. If you have the absolute value of anything greater than a number, that's going to create an or. You are going to have to get that down. If you create the wrong compound inequality, the whole thing is wrong. Okay, so there's 2 ways, 2 little tricks that I've used in the past. If you think about less than, and might make sense to you. Greater and or, a greater makes an or, a less than makes an and. You could do it that way. I always thought about the direction that my inequality symbols are pointing. If I think about my alphabet, the alphabet was written on your desk like when you're in elementary school. You know, you got that little ruler type thing, and it's your alphabet. If this was pointing to the left and you had the alphabet in front of you, would that be pointing to A or O? It'd be pointing to the beginning of the alphabet, which is A. Okay, so A for and. It's pointing to the left, A for and. If you're looking at the alphabet on your desk and it's pointing to the right, that's O for or. Okay, honestly, it sounds really silly, but that's what majority of my kids stick with, knowing it points to the left, that's and. Points to the right, it's or. Okay. Whatever way works for you, or just memorizing it, as long as you get it down and use the right compound inequality, I'm happy. Okay. So what we just did here explains this. We just thought through it, okay? Instead of just reading this blurry stuff copied from the book, okay? So what I'm going to do before we start solving, I'm going to set up your and your ors so you can see when we're working them where to put your placements, okay? So if I have the absolute value of x plus 3 is less than 5. Okay, now I'm going to use 2 colors so you can see color coordination and where I put things. You don't have to do that, but you can. So because it's a less than, that's going to create an and compound inequality. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever is inside my absolute value bars and I copy that down. That's going to be in the middle. Again, if you don't know your and or from 1.1, this isn't going to really click with you. So then an and we know should have a less than on both sides. And the 5 that I have written, I just bring down on the right. And then on the left side, I make it negative. Remember in 1.4, we had to create 2 equations. We had a positive and we had a negative. And I personally always put negative on the left. That's to train you because in compound inequality, the negative always goes on the left. Okay? So I just bring down what's inside the bars, copy down my number, make it negative on the left. It's as simple as that. From that point, it's 1.1 when you solve. Okay? Now, if I have the absolute value of x plus 3 is greater than 5, then that's going to create an or. What do we know about an or compound inequality?
There's 2 of them.
There's 2 of them. You have 2 separate ones, and it's separated with or in the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that x plus 3 in the middle, and we're going to write it twice. One's on the left, and one's on the right of that or. Okay, now the greater than 5, it's my positive. I make that one go on the right. And I just said negatives always go on the left, so I've got a -5. Now with an or, there are 2 separate ones. What should my inequality be on this left one? We know it's shaded in opposite directions, so my inequality should go in opposite directions, so it's less than. So when you do your or, when you make it negative, you flip the inequality symbol. Okay? And you can think about how when you're solving, when you divide by a negative, you flip the inequality symbol. Okay? So that's how we're going to create them. After you create your compound, after that it's 1.1. We're still doing set builder, we're still doing interval, and we're still graphing. Okay? So, Example 1. I've got the absolute value of g minus 5 is less than 15. My goal is still to get the absolute value bars by itself, which is already set up for us. Okay, so now we just have to determine is it an and or an or. It's an and. So that means I'm going to take this g minus 5 and I put it in the middle. And I put my less than on both sides. And I take this 15, it's positive on the right, negative on the left. From there, I just solve. Okay? So if I want g, what am I going to do? Add my 5 to the left, right, and middle. So negative 15 plus 5 is a negative 10. Less than g, less than 15 plus 5 is 20. Okay, now in 1.1, I told y'all to check 2 things. You check, is your smaller number on the left and your larger number on the right? Yes. Are my inequality symbols correct? Yes. So then I can tack on my set builder notation, but don't just put an x. My variable is a g, so we're going to put a g. Okay, now to graph that, I've got my negative 10 and my 20. What type of circles do I have?
Open.
Open circles. Where am I shading?
In between.
Okay, now for interval notation, what am I going to write?
Negative 10, comma 20. And they both have a parenthesis, not a bracket.
Very good. So I've got my set builder. I've got my interval. Make sure y'all are boxing and highlighting your answers. And then I've got my graph. Okay, do we have questions on how I set that up? All right. Number 2, I've got the absolute value of 6 minus 3x minus 3 is less than 6. What's my first step? I can't decide if it's an and or an or till the absolute value bars are isolated. There's going to be times where that might flip. What would cause it to flip?
Divide by a negative.
Multiplying or dividing by a negative. So do not get in the habit of identifying it first, only if it's like this where it's already isolated. So my first step would be to add 3 to isolate it. So then that gives me the absolute value of 6 minus 3x is less than 9. It's less than, so it's going to give me an and. Okay, so I take that 6 minus 3x and I copy it down. I put less than on both sides. And the 9 that I have gets copied down, and then I make it negative on the left. Okay. Now, how do I solve for my x? I want to get rid of that 6 first. So negative 15 is less than negative 3x, less than 9 minus 6 is 3. Then what do? Divide by negative 3, and when I divide by negative 3,
That's when it flips.
I flip my inequality symbols. I have a negative 15 divided by negative 3.
5.
Gives me a positive 5. And then a positive 3 divided by negative 3 is a negative 1. So my numbers and my inequalities are both incorrect. So I'm going to scoop it up and flip the whole thing, and that becomes negative 1 is less than x less than 5. Now they're both correct. I can tack on my set builder notation around it. And then I can graph it. I've got negative 1 and 5. What type of circles do they have?
Open.
Open, because it's not equal to. Shaded
In between.
in the middle.
And it's parentheses -1, comma, 5.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, what questions do we have? Those are two and examples. What questions do you have? Okay. Alright. Okay, example 3, I have an absolute value of 6x minus 7 minus 8 is greater than or equal to 3.
To add 8.
Or
I'm gonna add my 8 first. So absolute value of 6x minus 7 is greater than or equal to 11. It's by itself, so it creates an or, because it's greater than. So I'm gonna have two inequalities separated with an or, so I've got my 6x minus 7 that I'll write twice. The greater than or equal to 11 goes on the right, because positive always goes on the right. And then when I make it negative on the left, I flip that symbol less than or equal to negative 11. All right, now I just solve it. So if I have 6x minus 7 is less than or equal to negative 11, what am I going to do?
add
Add
7.
Add my 7. 6x is less than or equal to negative 11 plus 7.
-4.
And then divide by
6.
6. X is less than or equal to negative 4 divided by 6 will simplify to what? Negative 2 over 3. Very good. Okay, 6x minus 7 is greater than or equal to 11.
Add 7.
Handsome.
That'd be 18.
Okay.
Divided by 6.
X is greater than or equal to
3.
okay. Is my smaller number on the left?
Yeah.
Yes. Are my inequality symbols pointing outward? Yes. So I can tack on my set builder notation. A graph. Negative 2/3 and 3.
Close circles.
Closed circles. Very good.
And it's going to go out.
Outward. Very good.
Oh, and it's going to be bracket negative 2/3 comma 3 bracket.
Okay. Now that would mean I'm going anywhere between negative 2/3 and 3. Is anything shaded between the two?
No.
No. So start from the left.
Oh, infinity.
There you go. Negative infinity to your negative 2/3 with your bracket. And then your u, or you can write your or. Then 3 positive infinity. Okay, so I've got my set builder, my graph, and my interval. For your ors, on the first quiz, I did not count off if you didn't write it. I'm going to count off on the second quiz because it's got a second lesson pertaining to it. So write your or, and in between your interval, either have the u or the or. Okay? Questions? All right. Example 4. Absolute value of 4y minus 7 plus 8 is less than 17. Do you want to try this one on your own?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, what's your first step?
Subtract
Subtract
8.
8.
So you get the absolute value of 4y minus 7 is less than,
9. With the A.
it creates an and. Okay, so how do I write that from left to right?
Negative 9 less than 4y minus 7 less than 9.
Very good.
And you
Okay.
add 7 to all sides.
So then you get,
Negative 2 less than 4y less than 16. And you divide everything by 4. And you get negative 1/2 less than y less than 4. And it's correct, so you can do your set order.
okay, how did y'all do?
I did amazing.
Okay, we okay?
Yeah.
Okay, if we didn't do that, some of y'all I saw were creating an or. So make sure your inequality symbol, you have that down. If you didn't get this, do you have a question on where you might have gone wrong? I can look at your paper. Okay. All right. So you graph your 1/2, negative 1/2, and your positive 4 should have been open circles straight in the middle. And then your interval notation should have been what?
Parentheses negative 1/2 on the 4 parentheses.
Very good. All right. Example 5. I've got negative 4 times the absolute value of x minus 6 is greater than or equal to 12.
Divide by negative.
Divide by negative 4. What happens when I divide by negative 4?
If the sign switches.
So I divided by negative, I flip the inequality symbol, it's now less than or equal to negative 3. And what happens there?
You have to split it.
Split it in 2.
Slip it, I mean,
It's an or problem. It's an and problem.
It's an and. Okay, do we agree it's an and?
yeah.
Okay, so when I set up an and, I've got x minus 6 less than or equal to on both sides this negative 3. What am I going to do?
You're gonna make it a negative and a positive.
You're gonna make it a positive. Right? You're gonna bring down the negative, and then the other side's gonna be positive.
Like
That's
that?
what we said, yeah.
Can you do that?
Is that right?
Why are you questioning it?
I'm not. I
No.
just no.
No,
It's
it's like a
no, because you have to bring it down. But why couldn't we flip it?
like.
Is
Why
that-
can you not put
Why
the
couldn't I
negative
put the
here?
negative over there like we usually do?
Okay, because the way this reads, absolute value of x minus 6 is less than or equal to -3. So if I put it over here, this would read x minus 6 is greater than or equal to. So it would read different, but you're catching that you usually do the negative on the left. Okay, so let's work it out and see what happens. Okay, so if I add my 6 to both sides, I get 9 is less than or equal to x less than or equal to 3. My numbers are not in the right spot.
Flip it.
So if we flip it,
Flip the
now
signs.
you can't just flip the 3 and the 9.
You have to flip the signs.
You have to flip the signs. You flip the whole thing. So 3 is greater than or equal to x, greater than or equal to 9.
So does that make it a 4? That doesn't.
Okay, so what happens when I read this backwards is x is less than or equal to 3. If I graph that, that's this way. And x greater than or equal to 9 is this way. So I have an and problem, but my graph is an or.
So no
Oh, no
solution.
solution.
Okay, so that would give me no solution because an and is supposed to be in the middle. Okay, now we're going to pause here and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, can we pause?
Yeah, I'm going to pause and let y'all kind of finish writing, and then we're going to actually talk about the real reason why it's no solution. Okay, so algebraically, when we get an or graph on an and, I have nothing overlapped. Okay, if you're zoned out, I need you focusing again, because what I say, if you understand, you're going to prevent having to do all that work. Okay, what do we know about absolute value?
It's a positive.
It's a positive. You can't change what's inside, and absolute value is always positive because it's the distance from 0, right?
Yeah.
If absolute value is always positive, I'm going to do this in another color statement. If it's always positive, this statement is telling me something positive is less than or equal to a -3.
Oh, wait.
It can't be
It can't be
negative.
negative.
Okay, so can a positive ever be less than a negative?
No, because
No.
greater than a negative.
Okay, a positive will never ever be less than a negative. So if you understand the concept of what absolute value is, and you know a positive cannot be less than a negative, you could jump straight to
No solution.
no solution.
Okay, so we won't get in trouble for not doing the work
Yeah.
if it's no solution.
If it's no solution, you will not.
Okay.
I would like for y'all to understand the concept and not just memorize steps and get it. Like, just work. Because what's going to happen is some of y'all are going to do the work, do the steps, get here, give me the wrong interval and the wrong step builder because you're not paying attention to that. It should have been there. Okay? So it's even better if you get to this point, you see this negative, and you realize something's not right. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Now, it's not always going to be no solution, though. Sometimes it will be no solution. Sometimes it will be different. So with 1.4, if you had absolute value equal to a negative, it was automatically no solution because positive cannot equal negative. Okay? Here, positive cannot be less than a negative. The deal with inequalities is its relativity. Okay? I'm losing some of y'all, and y'all are going to have to just snap back into it. Because if you're zoning out at the beginning of the year, you are going to be doomed by the middle of the year. Okay? Everything's going to build. So if you catch on to the relativity, you have to understand, and what I mean by that is, how is this positive in relation to the negative? Is it less than? No. That's my no solution. Okay? We're going to move on. Do you get in trouble for doing this and figuring out no solution? Absolutely not. If you need to work it out to get no solution, that's fine too. Okay? Now, example 6. Absolute value of x plus 2 over 4 plus 3 is greater than 5. What's my first step?
Subtract. Oh, right. multiply more.
No, you always add
Add or
before.
subtract first.
Yeah, you always
Okay.
add or subtract before.
That absolute value is within that fraction, so I want that by itself. Did you have a question earlier, or were you stretching? Okay. All right, subtract your 3. Absolute value of x plus 2 over 4 is greater than 2. Now multiply by 4. Absolute value of x plus 2 is greater than
8.
8.
And that is an or.
That's an or.
And then you have to split it into one being negative, one being positive.
So how do I write it?
X plus 2, that sign, and then negative 8. The sign, the greater sign.
On the left, what is it?
No, it does.
Less than negative 8. X plus 2 greater than your 8. Okay. Now solve it by subtracting 2. X is going to be less than what?
By 2, that would be 10.
Negative 10. Or x is greater than
6.
6. Very good. Is that correct? Yeah. So tack on your set builder notation around it. You've got your negative 10, you've got your 6.
And then you have to, it's going or, so it's going to be the infinities.
Very good.
And then it'll be negative infinity, comma, 10, negative 10, then u, then 6, then infinity.
What goes on my negative 10 and 6?
96.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good job. Okay, the rest of y'all who aren't speaking, are y'all able to do this?
Yes, ma'am.
Or are we sitting here not sure what we're doing? Listen, I know Algebra 2 isn't the most fun thing for y'all, but y'all are going to have to get with it. Yes.
I forgot how to tell if it's like a 4 and
Okay, so if it's an absolute value is less than a number, that's going to give you your and.
Okay.
Less than and. Greater or. Okay?
just move.
But you can only tell that once the absolute value is isolated. Okay? Don't ever do it right at the beginning, because there's a possibility like if you, like here, where that inequality symbol flipped. So if we would have started here, it would have been an or. But really it's an and. Okay? All right, number 7.
You divide negative 2.
Divide by negative 2.
Okay. So absolute value of x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 10 divided by negative 2.
5, negative 5.
It's no solution. That's a negative.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I said earlier. Not necessarily is everything no solution, because you're okay. So the absolute value we know is what?
X minus 4.
Well, no, like any absolute value.
Positive.
It's positive. Okay. What do we know about positive in relation to this negative 5? This is what my problem is telling me. Is this true?
Yes.
A positive will always be greater than a negative, so it's not no solution, it's going to be
All real numbers.
all real numbers. So this is why I said not everything is going to be no solution. Now with inequalities, if you have a negative, you should have a red flag going off. Okay, which one is it? It's gonna be one of my special cases, but which one is it?
I'm
Okay.
confused on how to tell no solution and all real numbers
Yeah.
apart.
Okay,
If it's true, it's all
if
stuff.
it's true, then it's all real numbers. If it's not true, then it's no solution. So here, we had positive is less than a negative.
Oh, okay.
Not true, no solution.
No solution, okay.
Here, you've got positive is greater than a negative. That's true, so that's not all real numbers.
Yes,
Okay? Now, you can't just box all real numbers because you actually have a set builder and interval notation for that. Because what does all real numbers mean? Every single possible value on that number line.
So it'd be 5.
Not necessarily.
It'd be
You don't have to put any number on the number line. You have to shade it, but you don't have a number. Now, all real numbers is every single number, so my interval goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. Y'all remember that?
Mhm.
Okay. Now, my set builder is at XER. Y'all remember that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. With no solution, you don't, if you recognize it and you realize it's no solution without doing the work, you don't put a graph because there's nothing to do. But with all real numbers, you still have to do set builder, interval, and the graph. Okay. Now, could you have worked it out and gotten to all reals? Yes. What would happen is it creates an OR, but once you solve it, they will overlap, giving you the entire number line. Okay, so again, if you work it out all the way and you get to the number line and you figure it out, as long as you catch it at that point. Okay? Do we have questions on the difference between the two? Okay, so if you catch it, this is all you've got to do. Like, you don't have to do any further algebra. Okay? All right, number 8, do on your own.
Even if we divide by positive, we don't have to split this.
No, only if you divide by negative. You'll have fractions all year long. Okay, let's do it. Your first step was to do what?
Subtract, add and subtract first.
Okay. So
That'll
that
be
gives
20.
me 20.
And then you divide 4.
So then what does that give me?
They could do 5. And then you have to split that.
But it,
What does it make?
or.
An or.
Yeah.
Did everyone make it an or?
Yes.
Okay, so then you get 2x minus 5 is less than negative 5, or 2x minus 5 is greater than 5.
Yes.
Okay, add your 5. 2x is less than 0,
Divide by 2.
and x is less than
0.
0.
4.
Or
Add 5.
Okay, I'm out. Did we get there?
yes.
I did until we got that 2x
And then-
stuff.
Until we got the one.
That 2x stuff.
That's 0. I need to make it more of a like a this.
I got it now.
Okay. Is it 2? I don't know. Okay. All right. Add your 5 and 2x is greater than
10.
10.
Divide by
Divide by
2.
2.
You get
Five.
x 5.
5.
Okay. Now I've heard a bunch of no solutions.
Oh.
You can graph that.
You can.
0 is a valid number on the number line.
Yeah.
Okay. 0 does not mean no solution. The only time you're gonna get no solution
As in there's not.
is this.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got our 0 and we've got our 5.
Open circle.
Shaded left and right.
Yeah. And then you have to do your set builder. And then you have to do negative infinity, 0, comma 0, parentheses u, parentheses negative 5, infinity.
Y'all just saying.
No, I know what I'm saying, I just can't get it out.
Very monotone, very demure.
I thought you were fine. Okay. Good job. We have questions.
No.
I'll get 2 more.
Do what? Okay, good. All right, we got 2 more. Do number 9.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, do number 9. I did say do number 9, didn't I? Yeah.
I'm assuming we're gonna get friends.
Yeah. We have to divide stuff. We have to get that all.
So divide by negative 3. On the same page, remember? Oh, not negative,
It's and or.
negative.
Did you flip your signs?
You divide it by
Oh, because
negative, negative, so flip sides.
There should be no division.
What?
There's no division.
There is no division.
You multiply,
There
you
should be
don't
no
divide.
division.
Wait, is that considered dividing?
Multiplying is not considered dividing.
Why
That's
would
why I'm just, I don't know, okay.
You're supposed to
Why are y'all
multiply.
laughing at me? But you're actually, oh my.
Hey, y'all be nice. Y'all gonna start giving each other compliments, and I'm recording for the Google Slides, so.
What you want?
Right now?
Yeah.
You're just.
Wait, Mom, what's going to be on the videos? No.
I'm an editor. I can edit
You
stuff
can't
out.
really hear the voice.
Like, I can edit it out. Like, you know, I gotta know.
She's recording.
All right, what's your first step?
Oh, no, I'm not done.
Oh, well, geez. Okay.
You subtract five.
Well, they said hold on.
Oh,
Yeah, not ready.
Hold on.
Not quite.
Give everyone a chance to do it.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
Alright, I think I'm done.
when you multiply by a negative, you have to flip it. Okay, first step.
Multiply. Multiply.
Subtract five.
Okay, y'all come back. A little less talking. 13 minus 5.
8.
Okay. Now I said no division because you do not divide.
You multiply by 3.
You multiply by negative 3.
Negative 3.
You just go ahead and delete.
I told you already, I told you already.
So dumb.
What happens? What happens whenever you multiply by a negative? You flip your sign, and that becomes negative 24. Then what?
You subtract 10.
Oh, no, you separate
Yeah,
it.
you separate
It's
it.
an or. It's an or.
It's an or.
So you do 10 minus m is less than or equal to 10, negative 24.
And then the other one would be 5.
I told you.
Yeah, so
It's already a negative.
No, it's no solution.
No,
It's all real numbers.
Oh.
What did I put?
I knew it.
Yeah,
Okay, listen.
I got it right.
When you have this negative on the right, that's one of your special cases. You need to write out the positive and then finish the rest of your inequality expression and read it. Is a positive greater than a negative 24?
Yes.
Yes, so that's not all real numbers.
If you would have given us like one more minute, you would have figured it out.
So you could have worked it out, but if you did 10 minus n is less than or equal to negative 24, then you changed the problem. That wouldn't have been on the left. Okay, so if you work it out, you have to be careful with that. But if you're catching that it's a negative and it's got to be something, then good for you.
That was
Do number 10.
I'm afraid.
Alright, come on.
At 2. And I know you're stop saying that.
Hey, when y'all are working it, y'all don't have to, phone a friend for every step. So you work it, and then we're going to go over it.
Where did you manage that?
I finished that. I don't see it.
I don't know, like. It's like I'm fractions. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I think we get rid of the fraction and the negative two.
What'd you get here? Your first one. You added your 2 and what'd you get?
I got 12.
Then what'd you do? The absolute value for x plus 6 is greater than or equal to
18.
18.
I mean, it's an or.
Yeah, I know it's an or, but I want to know that part.
Okay. So whatever this reads comes to the right. 4x plus 6 is greater than or equal to 18.
And then 4x.
And then 4x plus 6, when you make it negative, you
Less
flip.
than or equal to.
Okay.
And then minus 6.
Okay, so 4x is less than or equal to.
Negative 24.
Y'all are too loud. I'm trying to go over it.
Yeah, did it right.
And you get negative.
Okay.
Or I subtract and you get 12. Divide by 4. And then you get x is greater than or equal to 3.
Okay. Tack on your set builder.
It's a closed circle. It's closed circle on both.
Don't forget both.
Then how do I do my interval?
Parentheses, negative infinity,
It's not
comma,
parentheses, it's
negative
bracket.
6, bracket,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
bracket 3, U bracket 3,
Right, you're right.
infinity, parentheses.
Okay. Were y'all okay solving it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have questions? Okay. So y'all's quiz is next class over 1-4 and 1-5.